Hello and welcome to another edition of What Does the Giraffe Say Media with me, Kathleen Retourne. We're an organisation that aims to connect people in conservation by holding live interviews on social media. Today, I'm very happy to be joined by Matt Lindenberg, and he is the founder of Global Conservation Corps. So before we start getting a bit deeper into the conversation, Matt, I'd love for you to tell us, for those who are not aware, a little bit about yourself and how the idea for your organization began.
Thanks, Kathleen. Yeah, and thank you for the opportunity to be on the show this evening, I suppose, depending on where you're joining from. My path to get to founding GCC started off when my parents bought a guest house in a little town called Sabi when I think I was 6 years old. And Sabi's right next to the famous Kruger National Park. And so every weekend, my dad took us to go and visit these like huge natural areas. And I got to see wildlife, fell in love with wildlife. And there was a couple of pivotal moments in my life, but one of them was where I got to go with field rangers, not field guides, but the actual rangers protecting the wildlife when I was, I think, 8. And they took me for a 2 or 3 hour patrol around the famous Sabi River. And I just remember having a huge amount of respect. And there was so much mystery around these rangers because they spoke a different language. They were from a different culture, but you could just see that the passion and the love that they had for wildlife and what they did was just so tangible. And I never forgot that. When I was, I think, 11 or 12, my dad took us to the States. I was there for 8 years, but I never forgot my roots. And when I was 19, I moved back to South Africa just to follow that passion. I was living in Hawaii at the time, and I was completely lost, didn't know what I was doing. I was living in paradise, but somehow I wasn't happy and fulfilled. And I thought back to being a kid and connecting with these rangers and with these heroes. And so then through my granny's connection, I got put in touch with the Southern African Wildlife College, and I studied there for a month. And then right afterwards, I got hired as a volunteer and spent 6 years working my way up through the ranks. Towards the second half of my time there, I was able to train rangers on the ecological side with one of my most revered friends and mentors called Anton Mzimba, who's now no longer with us, but really inspired me and showed me the importance of making sure that conservation was equitable and that everyone had a stake in it, especially the communities that have been living with this wildlife for thousands of years, and with South Africa's history are living a lot less closely to that wildlife than what they originally did. And through Martin's work and spending collective months out in the field with him, training rangers in Big 5 areas, he helped us found and start the Global Conservation Corps. So that's maybe even not that short. I kind of went on a tangent there, but I've had some amazing people help me get to that point where we decided to start up GCC.
And for those who are watching, I mean, you touched on it very quickly there, that you said, that about not a guide, but a ranger. So maybe if for those who are watching who aren't sure what the difference is, could you give a very quick explanation about what that difference is?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in South Africa, if you live here, especially if you've come for safari, people are going to say when you meet them, "Oh, I'm a game ranger," which definitely is an older term, but there's definitely a big delineation between a field guide and a field ranger. So a field guide is the public-facing tour operator that interprets the bush and the wildlife and your experience to guests that come through. They're public-facing and they're in the tourism industry, whereas your field ranger, the field ranger is the individual behind the scenes that is not public-facing, and that's committed his or her life to protecting that wildlife from a law enforcement perspective. They're law enforcement officers and do not interact with the public and are not supposed to be seen by the public. And that's why I have so much even more respect for field rangers, is because no one's able really to access them for something as small as to say thank you for the work that you do. You go on a safari and you've got someone that shows you a great leopard sighting, but what about the people that ensure that leopard even exists? You can't even find them to say thanks. And that's a great question, the difference between the two professions.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And we're going to kind of delve in a little bit deeper as well into the work that the rangers do and the importance of recognition a little bit later into the conversation. But for now, we're going to just kind of switch back and turn around and talking about some of the main focuses that your organization does. And one of the things that kind of really resonated with me is the work that you do with the communities, and in particular, the work that you do with the next generation. You have your Future Ranger program that is working with this next generation, and it's got several different streams within this. For those who don't know, can you explain a little bit about this? And also, can you talk to us about some of the challenges and the successes that you have seen here?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Future Rangers program was founded just about 5 years ago, and it came through a conversation that was extremely pivotal in GCC's career as an organization. And it was through the now departed or deceased Anton Mzimba, who was the head of Field Ranger Services at the Timbavati Private Nature Reserve. And during the filming of Rhino Man, one of our projects, which we'll talk about later, I hope, there was this one really like critical day where Anton, for the first time ever, as a field ranger, someone who's, let's say, a hardened man that fights poachers and protects wildlife for a living, he had this really vulnerable moment where he broke down and expressed that his greatest fear wasn't actually losing the rhino, but rather that his own children and his own village had never seen a rhino before. And I said, Anton, but that's really hard to believe. Surely, like, this, like, tell me more about it. And he said, no, we're completely like living separate. These fences were designed to keep animals in and animals separate from wildlife, but it has had this byproduct of keeping communities like really separate from wildlife. You've got families in our program in all parts along Kruger National Park with the surname Ngwenya, crocodile, or Ndlovu, which means elephant. So these names are part of like cultural identities, but because of fences being erected and the prohibitive costs of access to national parks, as well as limited transportation, and that perception that conservation belongs to the few and the privileged, that next generation is growing up without that connection and that buy-in to wildlife. And there's this really like powerful quote, I forget where it comes from, but it talks about, if you don't love something, you won't protect it. And how could you love something you've never known? And it was at that moment that I thought, well, geez, I come from a background of working with field rangers and holding that line. But like Anton always said, field rangers are buying us time. It's what we do at that time that counts. So we took Anton's warning or his insight and we said, well, let's go and investigate this ourselves. And we went out and with some of our team did preliminary surveys along the central part of Kruger National Park. We found that four out of 5 children living along that fence line had never seen wildlife before, which was just unbelievable. You might have students or youth living in a village right next to Kruger that could hear lions calling at night, that maybe hear stories of their grandfather saying, when I was your age, my cattle and buffalo used to graze together and at night would keep them in a kraal safe from lions. But there's a huge disconnect between youth and that natural world. And it's combined with this massive human population explosion that's happening along the fence line. So these historically wild places next to Kruger that used to have substantial amounts of wildlife have just been completely eradicated. And now you've just got urban sprawl and you've got development. And what used to be a very like wild, connected place between people and wildlife is really separate. And that's really why we started up the Future Rangers program. Rangers are out there on the front lines every single day, but this war against any type of poaching or illegal crime, it's not sustainable. What are we telling the rangers to say, hey, what you're doing now, it's not forever. We are doing something to honor the sacrifices you're making. It's also a big question. Anton would always say, when I hang up my boots one day, which I think most people now know that he has, who's going to replace Anton? And if that next generation of not just field ranger, but leader, the next generation of leader doesn't have that empathy or the skills, exposure, passion for wildlife, they're going to be a lot more susceptible to the terrible forces of corruption or intimidation if their hearts aren't concretely cemented in doing it for the right reasons. So that's just the backstory as to why we started Future Rangers. There's so many amazing programs across this landscape in the Kruger region and then across Africa and beyond that are doing amazing things with youth already. What we wanted to look at, though, was a longer term pipeline. So not just sending students on one safari and calling it good. What was a pipeline of local leadership going to look like? So we immediately looked at all the curriculum that was available, which is substantial. And then we looked at what are the gaps. And we found that high school was this really like this missing area in curriculum and in engagement. High school is like this forgotten land. So lots of NGOs have amazing programs in primary school. I think knowing we were all like unruly teenagers once, no one wants to work in high schools. Teenagers, especially myself, we were punks, like not fun to work with, but we miss that bridge. And that's really where we've been trying to dive into is, so we've developed curriculum for high school with our partners at the Africa Foundation and started to develop this pipeline of local leadership. That's in theory how it works. But what we do nuts and bolts is we employ local facilitators that go into the classrooms and once a week deliver conservation curriculum to these students. A lot of the curriculum is in the language of Xitsonga, so it resonates, it hits home. Our facilitators are also role models, all female facilitators, which I think we know the transformative power of having women in leadership, especially in conservation, and what it does for the family structure in a community. And they've become role models for these young men and women to move through the process. So we've got this, very, very tangible methodological approach. Once a week, we're teaching lessons with curriculum that we've designed, combined with experiences like safaris, game drives, field trips. But here's where it got really exciting. So I mentioned before, so many organizations doing amazing work. We have learned so much from who's come before us and who's doing things across the landscape. But the big pain point that we've all found through our own struggles is two things. Curriculum. We aren't sharing curriculum. We all have this beautiful curriculum we've spent lots of money on developing, but we're not sharing it. We are ring fencing our limited resources in conservation. The second thing is, historically, let's say a big organization, I won't say any names, but will send students on a safari. Everyone has a great day, everyone has a meal and a photograph, you see a lion, pictures get taken, the donor gets the photo, box gets ticked, and then those students, especially the ones showing passion, what happens to them? They go back into the ether, and that next generation of a wildlife or a reserve manager or a conservation pilot, like where did that passion go? So what we've done with stakeholders in the landscape and with our partners is we've developed the Future Rangers app. And this app allows, from our knowledge, for the first time in a conservation context, every time a student is exposed to a lesson, an activity, an experience, a mentorship opportunity, it's logged into a portfolio of evidence using our Future Rangers app, which from a student perspective, now when they apply for a scholarship or they apply for a job in an extremely competitive landscape, they can prove to that employer, hey, out of these 500 applicants, I'm the one. I've done 17 safaris, I've completed 18 lessons, I've had 3 months of internships at this reserve, and I'm the one that you want to have. So we've basically built a LinkedIn for the next generation of conservation leaders. And what we're finding is that a lot of partners and other orgs doing phenomenal work in the environmental education space are starting to adopt and use this app in their programming. Because from the NGO perspective, now all of a sudden, our app allows you to see how many teachers are teaching, how many schools are you influencing, how many students have gone on a game drive. We can measure now quantitative data, which can then go back to your donors where they can say, wow, this program was successful. We want to invest more. We want to put more money into this world of environmental education. So that's definitely been our biggest and most exciting breakthrough, is finding this value proposition that hasn't really been looked at, where you've got this intersection of technology, education, and conservation coming together to unlock 4 million people living next to Kruger. How much talent is lying there? We just don't know how to track it and then funnel it into tangible benefits and results for the folks most affected by the wildlife next door. So, yeah, you can tell I like what we do.
I love it. It's completely shining through, and just listening to you talk, it really kind of resonates. There's, and again, not mentioning names or anything like that. There's so many people that tick boxes and say, look, yes, we've done it, and there's no follow-up. People are then just left in the wilderness, and it's kind of like teasing them, here's what you could have had, and then they never get to see that again. So I love that you have that follow through and you continue the process, and it actually genuinely gives these people something to aim and work towards. We got a comment coming through from Ellen Gaze, and she is from Massachusetts, and she's saying, thank you for your educational work, very important. She's a former educator and taught lessons to her students. We need to teach our students so environmental and animal educational change can happen. Thank you, Ellen. We completely agree. So yeah, I mean, as I said, it's a great work that you guys are doing. What is your selection process then when it comes to the students that are joining onto your program? Yeah. I mean, I know, for example, going back to what you said, I certainly was a bit of a terror at that age as well, and didn't know where I was going or what I wanted to do. And so having something like this, I can imagine, gives someone a bit of a focus and a bit of a drive. What's the process there?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it almost looks like a pyramid with our pipeline. So in primary school, we believe that it's every child's God-given right to have the ability to see and experience nature. So we don't have a selection process. We work with one of probably our oldest partner now, the Southern African Wildlife College, and we work with them to send students from primary school and then into the high school levels just on safaris. We just get that exposure taking care of. But as students start to move into that high school space, what we've done is we've incorporated the National Geographic Learning Framework, which standardizes certain skills, knowledge and attitudes towards wildlife, meaning they've quantified what certain definitions mean. Meaning, if you're in grade 10 and you're a teacher, you have a list of attributes that you can assign to a specific student. So some of those things, for example, are leadership, collaboration, problem solving. You can assign that metadata to a student. And so as students start to shine and flourish in our program, all of a sudden the top performing students stick out. The data shows who's answering questions, who's showing initiative in the classroom, who's leading the ambassador group with the students. And that's really where we use the data to show, okay, who's the top 3 performing students in the class. Our pipeline is, so we've been doing this for 5 years now, and we're starting to move into the finishing stages of high school as we've learned and grown with these students we've been impacting for a while. That next phase is then to partner up the best performing students with the most stars next to their name with prospective mentorship opportunities, scholarship opportunities, and then eventual employment. So it really is merit-based. And the nice thing about our app is it's teacher-facing. So as a student, I can't log in and just pretend that I love conservation. It's peer-reviewed. It comes from your teacher or your mentor that uses the app. And so you know that it's coming from a credible source, especially now that we've got multiple organizations impacting one student. So all of a sudden, the authenticity of the data being recorded is cross-referenced by multiple partners at one school, for example. So we can really see, if I had my aunt, for example, teaching me in the class, she's going to be like, yeah, that guy, he's pretty cool. He's going to move places. But this system helps with different teachers, different partners. We really can hone in on who's the shining star. And I think one cool thing, just going back to Ellen being a former educator or a current educator, I forgot what it said there, but yeah. We often find when we're seeing talent trying to get into that conservation space, it's normally students with really high math and science marks. That's what we've judged on a landscape level, our requirements. Oh, you're good at science, you must love nature. Not necessarily. What we try to find now is passion is a really big motivating factor, and there's some really interesting science coming out about what are the 5 top markers and indicators to select for when it comes to emerging conservation leaders. And it would show that passion has just as much, if not more, standing than things like, smarts or great results at school. Passion's definitely going to be the thing that drives you forward, especially when you're facing criminal syndicates who want to pay you thousands of dollars for information. Like, that passion is going to keep you there and keep you moving forward. I'll stop there.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. And I know that when we were talking about how the project came about, we were talking about Anton, and I'm aware that obviously he was a very good friend, colleague, an incredible ranger, so I understand it's kind of still a little bit raw for you. He was tragically killed in quite a shocking way, and his death kind of resulted in a big outpouring of grief and outrage. What was it that you think that made people so angry about this, and why is this kind of a bit more of a really worrying turn in developments?
Yeah, it's a good question. So personally, I met Anton 12 years ago. We met at the Southern African Wildlife College, where we were both, I think I just started working there, and he was coming for a really advanced type level training course. And Anton, I think, just to your point about why were people so outraged, Anton just had this unique ability. I don't know how many languages he actually spoke, but he understood at least 5. Portuguese, Afrikaans, Shangani, Zulu, English. Incredibly, he taught himself English through a bird book, which the man was a perfect combination of compassion, leadership, humility, and integrity. He embodied what a ranger is, could, and should be. But he also had the ability to communicate that to landowners, to his team, to guests, to donors. Anton really quickly throughout, well, not really quickly, but over 25 years of being a ranger, he became the voice of rangers, because he could put the struggle of rangers into words, into English, that other rangers, who a lot of them sign up to be in the bush and get away from people, Anton had the ability to speak to people as an ambassador for rangers. So yeah, losing him was devastating, also because of his connection to multiple celebrities and high-ranking officials around the world who had either met him through Zoom or had met him in person. And it just felt, I think, also the severity of the murder. It is an ongoing investigation, so certain things do need to stay quiet, but certain things are out in the world. And of course, one of them is how he got murdered. His wife got shot. This was in front of his family. And a really big question that I'm hearing, why it's caused such a stir as well. Rangers that I talked to and I've known for a long time, they're saying, well, if they can take out Anton, well, who's next?
Yeah.
And it's I can only imagine what it must feel like to be a ranger, knowing that someone as iconic and almost like untouchable and as lovable as Anton, could be taken out in such a brutal fashion. And one thing that we really are trying to do is to ensure, like working with the Timavati Private Nature Reserve, that his name and his work and what he stood for carries on, for a couple of reasons. But I think it's really important too, if we go quiet and if we go silent, we let those guys win.
Yeah.
And the voice and the name and the work and the mission of Anton, what he stood for field rangers, and also what he believed in for the future, that next generation of leaders, is something that we believe we need to keep taking forward. And we've gotten the support of his loved ones to ensure that their dad's name continues. That's incredibly important as well, that he has not forgotten. A bigger piece of this puzzle is that over the last 10 years, at least 1,000 rangers have been killed on the front lines. So Anton's story is not completely unique in that way. There's rangers all around the world. I mean, I think the statistic was it's around 150 rangers a year now that are recorded. So that's 3 a week. 3 rangers a week, somewhere around the world, with the majority of them happening in Africa, are losing their lives to protect that natural world that, let's say, we as folks with privilege are able to go and enjoy in a safari or an experience around the world. Like, it's just really important to acknowledge how important these individuals are. And I think Anton had the ability for his story to represent many rangers. Myself and then the director, John, of Rhino Man, the movie, we went up to Botswana because Anton had been nominated for the Best Game Ranger of the Year award at the African Conservation Awards maybe 6 weeks ago. And we had about 100 rangers in the room from all different countries around Africa, and we were able to show them Rhino Man, this documentary where Anton's been the protagonist. And besides the fact that the majority of those rangers were in tears, more importantly, why were they in tears? It was because that they all had an Anton equivalent in their lives. All of those rangers had lost someone close to them. And I think this circles back to that bigger picture of why we feel so passionately and strong about this, is that rangers are paying ultimate price all the time. And what we are doing right now is not working. If it was completely working, like, yeah, some things are working and there is progress being made. But if the problem wasn't there, we wouldn't be losing 150 rangers a year. So we as a greater collective and as a world need to think about, well, first of all, how do we keep a rhino alive, or how do we prevent this before a rhino dies? How do we prevent this before a ranger dies? And from our perspective, it's got to be education and tangible benefits to the folks living alongside these parks. The one last thing that I'll say, just because this is really important, is we work in a very incredible school, the Kruger National Park. And about a year ago now, the principal called and said, hey, just so you know, we've had 3 poachers come in from Mozambique. They approached 3 of our students after school one day and asked for information around where they could find rhino horn, where they could find rangers to talk to, would they take a little bit of money, do they need a lift? And Mr. Chlati, who's on our board, the principal, got feedback that all these 3 students said, no, we're here for nature. This is what we believe in and stand for. Called Mr. Chlati, called the police, and the suspects were apprehended. So that just shows you like how we think in our traditional sense, the fence is the barrier, but it's not. The people need to be the barrier. People can be the fence. And you live in Zambia, you know how community-based natural resource management can work in places like Zambia and Namibia. Like the people have got to be that fence.
100%. And I think it's incredible testament to the work you guys are doing. And also kind of, it might be shocking to people back home to realize that these guys are so ruthless that they are going to the schools and trying to kind of get these young kids involved in something that is ultimately destroying their heritage. But they know that a lot of these children don't have a lot of things and could be easily swayed. So for them to stand their ground is absolute testament to the work that you guys are doing. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, just then when we were talking regarding Anton, we were talking about the Rhino Man, the movie. Can you talk to us a little bit about this movie? I know he was kind of a big player within as a kind of a main character, if you could say. But what's the movie about? What is it for? What's your hopes and goals for it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the film Rhino Man came about 7 years ago. My dad is a musician and an artist, and he wrote a song called Rhino Man, which was for the Rangers. And so he wrote a song called Rhino Man, and associated with that song back in 2015 is we thought, let's put together a quick Kickstarter and a little promotional film about the Rangers. And when I say film, I mean like a 2-minute trailer to talk about the Rangers. Because at the time, in 2015, this was right after we had lost Martin, this iconic Ranger trainer. And there was this huge void. And I just felt like there are so many great organizations doing so much good work for Rangers, but there's not, like, on the international side. I did my master's in the US. People just had no idea about Rangers. And the whole point was taking the story of the Ranger to an international audience and telling that story. Well, we we put the teaser out for Rhino Man on World Rhino Day, the 22nd of September, 2015. And I got a call from my friend Justin, and he said, hey man, National Geographic, have you seen this? And Nat Geo had commented on our 2-minute piece, and we're like, hey, let us know when the documentary's done. We want to talk. And we talked as a team. We were like this was supposed to just be a quick. Anyways, that was 7 years ago. And through that journey, we decided to commit as a team to telling the Ranger story on a longer format. And the story follows 3 different log lines. Anton as the ultimate Ranger. We follow his story with his family, with his day-to-day duties, with his struggles, a couple conflict situations we get into, Anton talking about the future. So we humanize the Ranger story through Anton's existing path. We go back in time and pay tribute to the original Rhino Man, Martin Mzimba, who trained over 15,000 Rangers across Africa. And then we follow the third storyline interweaved, which is this next generation of youngsters who want to become rangers. So we follow them through a really arduous selection course at the SA Wildlife College for 6 days when they go through selection. And for anyone who doesn't know how selection works, to become a field ranger, even to get into field ranger training school, you have to go through a paramilitary type selection process to get in. So it's a 5-night, 6-day process where you've got sleep deprivation, you run about 180 kilometers on foot, you've got a 22-kilogram backpack filled with sand on you at all times, and you're just getting absolutely destroyed with physical fitness and challenges and mental exercises by your drill sergeants. So we follow that process to see what does that next generation look like and who is the next Rhino Man. It's really unfortunate. We had decided when we went to go and film the story that there would be a mixed selection. You know about the Black Mambas, you know about the Akashinga Rangers. So it's really unfortunate with limited budget and timing that we couldn't film a selection where it was mixed, male and female candidates in there. So this journey really talks about the past, the present, and the future, those 3 generations of rangers. And it's been created for 2 reasons. The first one is a tribute to the rangers. So that way the rangers feel like their story is represented out in the world. And the second reason we made it is for an awareness, so that folks really understand, like, what is that price that rangers are paying? Why are rhinos dying? What does this actually mean? And built into that, we've got a social impact campaign that we are launching. So that way, when someone watches it online, we're looking at a big streaming platform to sell it to. You can immediately go to the website and see how a donation can really move the needle with a couple of different partners. So Southern African Wildlife College, that's where a lot of the rangers in this whole landscape get trained. So we put funds there. We put funds into our Future Rangers program for that next generation aspiring to become leaders in the conservation space. And then also looking to partner with Lead Ranger and the Thin Green Line, who've been really instrumental, especially in the recent wake of Anton's passing, and bringing immediate support with their Fallen Ranger program, providing support to widows. So it's a really big campaign. It's a really big vision, but we've managed to land some amazing celebrities to help support and bring this message to life. We've got Marcel van Leeuwen. It's an amazing Dutch artist that's done the original artwork for the Rhino Man poster. We've also got Sipho Mchunu, who's done the original title track. Sipho is one of the most famous and one of the oldest artists in South Africa that went through those apartheid years with Johnny Clegg and was in Jaluka and Savuka. And we've had an original song written which talks about losing a brother, losing a mentor, and again, begging that question, who's going to replace the individuals that have been lost. So we're really excited. We're in that final stage. We've got a couple of exciting big celebrities to bring on board that we're working on over the next few months. And then early next year, going to the film festival circuit and bringing our film to market, so that after 7 years, and I wouldn't recommend making a documentary, it's not a walk in the park, but we can bring this to life and looking at the biggest way possible to put rangers on the map, and comes back just to saying, hey, I watched you, I know your story, and thank you. We see you.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. We've spoken on it a few times as we've been discussing it, with the tour guides, they are at the front. They're the ones that are telling the story, showing the animals and that kind of thing. These guys are often doing incredibly difficult work, long hours. It's not only just facing, the fear of poachers, but the animals themselves who don't know they're being protected and can sometimes turn on them, the elements, illnesses, drowning. I mean, it's the threats that these guys face and the things that they go through to protect our wildlife is absolutely huge. And I think at the minute, the recognition is not enough to show the world how incredible these guys are, because they deserve so much more. So thank you so much for kind of trying to put that out there. And I know there's a lot of other organizations as well, Thin Green Line, who you mentioned just there. We had them on the show, and they're doing also some incredible stuff to try and keep pushing this awareness and trying to make people wake up and see how incredible these guys and girls are. We have a question coming through from Alison Jeremy, and she is asking, What more can be done to help protect the rangers?
That's a really good question. I suppose there's a couple different things that we could do, and it also, I mean, I believe this might not be public yet, but very soon it's going to come out if it's not out already. Sometimes I lose track with but no one's known like how many actual rangers there are in the world. Like that's been a huge issue. Rangers have not, as a profession, being a ranger has not been recognized by the World Labor Organization. Like it's still not recognized as a profession. So it's been really hard to quantify how many individuals are actually out there fighting for wildlife. So that just to kind of paint that picture, it's like how do we protect the rangers? Well, rangers aren't even being, what would you call it, like acknowledged for what they're doing, and it's hard to quantify, and it needs to be standardized as to who and what a ranger is and what they do. But it's a tough question, like what we did with the Timbavati Private Nature Reserve, amazing partners of ours where Anton worked and some incredible rangers operate there every day, is we started to reach out to donors and sort of match the rangers' needs with what the donors felt passionate and excited about supporting. So from a direct impact perspective, I mean, rangers, like even like, pairs of boots, like rangers are being killed for their boots. That's the kind of like environment that some of these guys are living in. So equipment's a really big one. That's a massive piece. There's another way to help in a way in that I feel like many rangers, their eyes still are on Anton's case. It's been almost 2 months now. It's 2.5 months since Anton passed, and there still hasn't been verdict and a justice. It's an ongoing case. And I feel like if the rangers could get a win and know that justice had been served to one of their brothers, it would make them feel like, oh, so when, let's say, if I die one day, justice will be served. My family will have, access to funding and support. So on that line of thinking, there's this great organization called Care 2, and there's a petition which we could put in the show notes, but it's to seek justice for Anton's murder. And this was brought to my attention a couple of weeks ago, and it's currently sitting at around 75,000 votes from around the world. And so I think that's, for anyone, Alison, you asked a good question, like even just a simple thing. I think, Kathleen, you're looking to find it right now, but you can go there and you can just
see my eyes going off.
You can go and put your name and sign your seal of approval and endorsement to say, yeah, I'm behind seeking justice, and this is something that we'd like to use as leverage to bring to, it could be a minister, it could be someone operating on the case themselves, but to know that there's 75,000 people, the high majority of which have never met Anton before, but still care enough about his story to put their names to the cause, I think that's testament to that people are inherently good and people do want to help and help where they can. Alison, I'm not sure where you live, but it is really hard to think of ways to help rangers if you're living far away or if you aren't operating on the front lines with them every day. I think another big thing is just awareness, sharing this petition. Awesome. Thank you that you just put it in now, Kathleen. Sharing awareness, sharing ranger stories. There's so many great orgs now that are putting out awesome media about that ranger journey, the ranger struggles. And, mentioned like the Thin Green Line and what they're doing for the Fallen Ranger program. Like that's another way that you could directly help or reach out to these organizations and say, what do your teams need? Where can we do something? Thank you, Stacey. Yeah. So that's, probably a little bit around the way reply. There's quite a few different ways that you can help, but I just think even by being on this call and by spending your, Wednesday night or Wednesday midday, wherever you are with us and learning more about the Rangers, that's already a step in the right direction. Just to hear their story a little bit more.
Yeah, I completely agree. Thank you so much, Matt. Okay, I have only one more question left. If you have a question to Matt that you'd like to ask, please pop it in the comments section and I will do exactly that. If you are watching and it's no longer live, because it will remain on our pages, please do again put your question in and I will be able to reach out to Matt and get a question, the answer for you. So we've been kind of talking around it throughout the entire conversation, but conservation is notoriously difficult. It's an industry where it's a lot of times 2 steps forward, sometimes 1 step back. you're facing the struggle not just of nature, biodiversity, human loss, animal loss. I'll probably end it there before we all get too depressed. How do you keep yourself positive amongst all of this when this is kind of barraging against you? What do you do to try and keep yourself positive? And what advice would you give to people to kind of stay motivated in these kind of difficult scenarios?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's a really good question. So in the filming of Rhino Man, we met this amazing friend called Yvette Taylor. She works for the Earth Organization, which is in KZN. They do a lot of amazing work. And in part of this interview, they used to head up the Tula Tula Rhino Orphanage, and at least support it in a very, very big way. And she always said, "Yeah, we think it's bad now, but imagine if we did nothing." And I really like that comment. Like, if we had done nothing, if we hadn't had this conversation, or if we hadn't impacted just one more student, like, what would that world look like? And I think for me, it's actually really easy. I want to give a huge shout out. Like, I would not have the privilege or position to be sitting here talking to you if it wasn't for the most amazing team that I've been able to work with now for years. Lifa, Promise, and Mboni these are the heroes every single day that are inspiring that next generation of youth. And today, I quickly got the fortune of having a coffee with Mboni, who came here to see me. And he had just gotten basically the entire town of Hoedspruit, where I live next to Kruger Park, to donate thousands and thousands of rands worth of produce and equipment and tents, because tomorrow we're having a careers and conservation expo for 7 different high schools, bringing 400 students together, where youth have the opportunity to meet conservation professionals. We're bringing together different universities, NGOs, role models, inspirational speakers to come together and expose that next generation's psyche and minds to what's out there, and to see the passion that my colleagues have for the work that gets done. That fuels me. That makes me just feel like there is hope. I met Mboni through a scholarship. He came through our scholarship program 2 years ago, and I remember he was the only one that came up to me after 6 weeks of training at the Wildlife College. He trained to be a field ranger, and he said, "Matt, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity from GCC." And the way that he presented himself, and just to say something as simple as a thank you, made it all worth it for me. I took my Future Rangers, so like, here's my little sticker for Future Rangers. I took my shirt off and I gave him my Future Rangers shirt, because I felt like I just met the person that embodied that entire process, and that I wanted to do everything I could to see more Mbonis and Lifas and Promise in the world find their potential and find their passion, and that I would work my way out of a job one day. And that is Mboni and Lifa and Promise talking to you on the show next time, because as long as we keep investing in the most amazing people and talent that call this place home, like, the future is bright, because it's our future, and it's in good hands. So yeah, I look to the people. We're inherently good. We just get a bit lost along the way, and I'm really fortunate to be surrounded by the most amazing team, board, volunteers, donors. Like, I feel really, really humbled and privileged and fortunate to be, doing some of this work alongside the best people. So that it makes me smile.
Yeah, it makes me smile as well, because there are some incredible people out there, and just there's so many different organizations all around the world. Some of the big ones, some of the tiny ones that we've never even heard of, but they're striving to do better, to make a difference and to make change. And when you're seeing kids not being tempted by money, and because they're passionate about the wildlife, their heritage, I mean, that's, to me, absolutely incredible. You're doing a great job, Matt. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we say goodbye?
I think I've talked everyone's ears off, but I really appreciate you having me on the show and the ability to spread more information and info. And we'll be reporting, signal permitting, an Instagram live from the school tomorrow, where we've got 400 students coming together to celebrate a future in conservation. So for anyone on it'll be on Instagram at the Global Conservation Call. You can tune in and see this amazing team and what they've prepared in store for these 400 learners tomorrow. So yeah,
That's going to be amazing. What time did you say that live was?
The live's probably going to be between 10:30 and 12 South African time, somewhere in there. So yeah, I can't do the math right now, but yeah, somewhere there.
No, it's fine. I would say if you're interested, guys, and you're watching back home, then just follow them on Instagram, and then once they go live, you'll get a notification to tell you that they are live, and you can watch the magic happen in front of your eyes. We've had some lovely comments as we've been talking, lots of support from all around the world, lots of really kind comments. And I'm just going to bring a couple of those up now, as we say. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining in. If you have enjoyed the show, please do give it a like, comment, and share. The more people who see it, the more awareness we can raise and the more help that we can do to try and make these organizations get bigger, better, and stronger and continue to do the incredible work that they're doing. But yes, thank you very much for joining us. And for now, enjoy the rest of your day.